What's the most life-changing phone call you ever received? Mine came at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I know the exact time because I was staring at my phone, debating whether to answer the unknown number. Rule 1 of being a broke college student. Never answer calls you don't recognize. They're either debt collectors or your mother's friends trying to set you up with their wonderful sons. But something made me swipe to answer. Is this Quinby Thorne? The voice was formal, crisp, like someone reading from a script. Depends who's asking, I mumbled, still half asleep. This is Fletcher and Associates. We represent the estate of Cordelia Ashworth. Are you the daughter of Zara Thorne, formerly Zara Ashworth? My blood went cold. Mom had never mentioned anyone named Cordelia, ever, and she'd certainly never mentioned being an Ashworth. I think you have the wrong number, I said. Ms. Thorne, your grandmother passed away last month. According to her will, you've inherited her estate. We need to schedule a meeting immediately. Grandmother? Mom always said both her parents died when she was young. No siblings, no family. Just us against the world, she'd say. That's impossible. My mom doesn't have any family. Ms. Thorne, the voice softened slightly. Your grandmother left very specific instructions. She knew your mother had told you she was dead. There's quite a lot to explain. I sat up in my tiny dorm room, suddenly wide awake. What kind of estate are we talking about? I asked. $17 million. And a house. The room started spinning. 17 million? We'd been living on ramen and hope for years. Mom worked 3 jobs just to keep me in school. Why now? If she's been alive this whole time, why reach out after she's dead? Your grandmother was estranged from your mother, but she's been watching you, paying for things. Your scholarship to university? That wasn't merit-based. My scholarship. My full ride to the most expensive private school in the state. I'd always wondered how I'd beaten out thousands of applicants. She paid for my school, among other things. Ms. Thorne, there are conditions to the inheritance. You must come to Willowbrook immediately, alone, and you cannot tell your mother about this call. Why can't I tell Mom? Silence stretched across the line. Because your mother isn't who you think she is. And neither are you. The lawyer gave me an address in Willowbrook, a town I'd never heard of, 3 hours north. Said I had 48 hours to decide or the money would go to charity. After hanging up, I stared at my phone for an hour. Then I called Mom. Honey, it's almost 5 a.m. Is everything okay? Mom, who is Cordelia Ashworth? The silence that followed told me everything. Where did you hear that name? Her voice had changed completely. Gone was my warm, loving mother. This voice belonged to a stranger. Someone called about her estate. Said she was my grandmother. Pack your things, now, we're leaving town. What? Mom, what's going on? Just do it, Quinby. We have maybe an hour before they realize I know. Before who realizes? Before what? That's when I heard it. Cars pulling up outside my dorm, multiple engines, footsteps in the hallway. Someone knocked on my door. Quinby Thorne, we need to talk. I looked out my window. Black SUVs surrounded the building. Men in suits stood at every exit. Mom, I whispered into the phone. I think it's too late. The knocking became pounding. Quinby, listen to me very carefully. Mom's voice was urgent now. Whatever they tell you, whatever they show you, remember this. Everything you think you know about our family is a lie. Trust no one. And whatever you do, the door exploded inward. Don't let them take you to Willowbrook. 3 men in expensive suits stepped through the splintered doorframe. The one in front had silver hair and cold blue eyes that seemed to catalog everything about me in seconds. Ms. Thorne, he said calmly, as if breaking down doors was part of his daily routine. I'm Detective Garrison with the state police. We need you to come with us. Where's your warrant? I clutched my phone tighter. Mom's voice still a whisper in my ear. He smiled, the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. This isn't that kind of visit. Your grandmother's estate requires immediate attention. There are security concerns. My grandmother is dead. I backed toward my window, calculating the drop to the grass below. 3 stories. Probably survivable if I aimed for the bushes. Ms. Thorne, the second man spoke up. He was younger, nervous. There are things about your family you don't understand. People who want to hurt you. People like you. We're here to protect you, Garrison said. Cordelia Ashworth made many enemies during her lifetime. Word of your inheritance has already leaked. Do you really want to find out what happens to a 20-year-old girl with $17 million and no protection? I pressed the phone closer to my ear. Mom's voice was barely audible now. Baby, can you hear me? Yes, I whispered. Whatever happens, don't sign anything. Don't trust anyone who claims to know what's best for you. And remember, Garrison snatched the phone from my hand and crushed it under his heel. Enough games. You're coming with us. Am I under arrest? Not yet. The third man stepped forward. He was massive, built like a linebacker, with scars across his knuckles that told stories I didn't want to hear. Let's make this easy, he rumbled. I grabbed my emergency backpack, the one Mom had taught me to keep packed since I was 12. Back then, I thought it was paranoia. Now I realized it was preparation. Fine, but I'm driving myself, Garrison laughed. I don't think so. Your car might have mechanical problems on the way to Willowbrook. There it was. They were taking me exactly where Mom said not to go. I'm not going to Willowbrook. Yes, Garrison said, nodding to the linebacker. You are. The big man moved faster than someone his size should. He grabbed my arm, but I'd spent 4 years in self-defense classes after a particularly bad night when Mom came home with bruises she wouldn't explain. I drove my elbow into his solar plexus and stomped on his instep. He doubled over, gasping. I sprinted for the window. The younger man caught me just as I reached the sill. Please don't make this harder than it needs to be. Get off me! Quinby, stop. I'm trying to help you. Something in his voice made me pause. While Garrison and the linebacker felt like predators, this one seemed different. Scared, maybe. Who are you really? I asked. My name is Tobias Fletcher. I'm Cordelia's lawyer. The real one. The person who called me wasn't me. Someone's been intercepting communications meant for you. He glanced nervously at Garrison. Your grandmother left specific instructions. You were supposed to have choices. These men are not part of the plan. Garrison straightened, his facade slipping. Enough, Fletcher. She comes with us now. Under whose authority? Tobias stepped between us. Mine. Garrison pulled out a badge, but not a police badge. This one had a symbol I didn't recognize. Some kind of tree with twisted branches. Tobias went pale. The syndicate. Cordelia said you might come. What's the syndicate? I asked. The people your grandmother spent 30 years hiding from, Tobias whispered. The people your mother ran from when she was pregnant with you. The linebacker had recovered enough to block the door. Garrison pulled out his phone and made a quick call. Yes, we have her. Bring the car around and prep the facility. Facility? That didn't sound like a law office. Tobias, I said quietly. What did my grandmother really do? She discovered something she shouldn't have. About the town. About the families who run everything. She tried to expose them. Expose what? Garrison ended his call. Nothing that concerns you anymore. You're about to become very rich and very quiet about family business. And if I refuse? His smile returned. Girls with your background rarely live long enough to spend their inheritance anyway. Terrible accident rates among young women who ask too many questions. That's when I understood. This wasn't about money. This was about silencing whatever secrets my grandmother had tried to tell. Tobias, I said, backing toward my desk. How long have you known about me? Your grandmother hired me when you were born. She's been protecting you from a distance ever since. Protecting me from what? The truth about Willowbrook. About what really happened to the other families who tried to leave. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out the one thing Mom had given me when I started college. A small silver locket that belonged to her mother. The mother she'd told me was dead. Inside was a photo I'd never really looked at. A woman who looked exactly like me, standing in front of a massive house. On the back, someone had written, Willowbrook Estate, 1987, before everything changed. This is her. I breathed. This is Cordelia. Tobias nodded. She wanted you to have that. It's the only photo she kept. Garrison's patience was clearly running out. We're leaving. Now. Wait. I studied the photo more carefully. In the background, barely visible, was a man in a suit. A man with silver hair and cold blue eyes. A man who looked exactly like Garrison, just 30 years younger. You know her, I said slowly. You knew my grandmother personally. Garrison's expression shifted. For just a moment, something that might have been pain flickered across his features. She was my wife. The room went silent. Your wife? Tobias stammered. Before she became Cordelia Ashworth. Before she started asking questions about things that were none of her business. Before she stole my daughter and disappeared. My legs felt weak. Your daughter? Zara? Your mother? He stepped closer. Which makes you my granddaughter? The world tilted. This man, this cold, threatening man, was my grandfather? That's impossible. Mom said her parents were dead. To her, I was. The day she learned what I really did for a living, what this family really was. His voice softened, just slightly. Cordelia convinced her I was a monster, that the only way to protect you was to run. Are you? I asked. A monster? He was quiet for a long time. That depends on your definition. I've done terrible things to protect this family, to protect this town, to protect secrets that would destroy a lot of innocent people if they came to light. What secrets? Come to Willowbrook with me. Let me show you what your grandmother was really trying to expose. Let me show you why she was wrong. Tobias grabbed my arm. Quinby, don't. Once you go there, once you see what's in that house, you can never leave. That's why your mother ran. That's why Cordelia spent her final years planning your escape route. Escape route? The money, the inheritance. It was meant to give you options, to let you disappear completely if you chose. She knew they'd come for you eventually. Garrison pulled out a set of keys. Your grandmother left you a choice, it's true. Come willingly and learn the truth about your family. Or spend the rest of your very short life running from it. And if I come with you, you take your place in the family business. You honor the commitments your grandmother made, and you live a very comfortable, very protected life. Doing what? What Ashworths have always done. Whatever it takes to keep Willowbrook safe. I looked at the photo again. Cordelia looked so young, so hopeful. What had changed between 1987 and now? Show me, I said finally. Tobias looked stricken. Quinby, no. Show me what's so important that my grandmother spent 20 years hiding from it. Show me what my mother was so afraid of that she'd rather live in poverty than come home. Garrison nodded to his men. Bring the car around, we're going home. As they escorted me from the building, I caught sight of my reflection in the lobby mirror. For the first time, I could see it. The resemblance to the woman in the photo. The same dark hair, the same stubborn chin, the same look of someone about to walk into a trap. 20 minutes later, we were on the highway heading north. Tobias rode in the passenger seat, constantly checking his phone. The linebacker, who'd introduced himself as Bruno, drove while Garrison sat beside me in the back. Tell me about my mother, I said as we passed the city limits. Zara was spirited, like you, like Cordelia. Garrison stared out the window. She believed in fairness, in justice, noble concepts that don't always align with necessity. What's that supposed to mean? Sometimes, to protect the many, you have to sacrifice the few. Your mother never understood that concept. Give me an example. He was quiet for several miles. Then, there was a reporter, came to Willowbrook in 1995, asking questions about some missing persons reports, people who'd supposedly moved away but never collected their final paychecks. never transferred their medical records. What happened to him? He had an accident. Tragic car crash on the winding road out of town. You killed him. I protected 847 families from having their lives destroyed by headlines that would have painted them all as accomplices to something they knew nothing about. Accomplices to what? Garrison turned to study my face. You really don't know, do you? Cordelia never told you anything. Told me what? Willowbrook isn't just a town, Quimby. It's an experiment. A place where certain problems get solved permanently. My stomach clenched. What kind of problems? The kind that can't be handled through traditional legal channels. The kind that powerful people need to disappear. You're talking about murder. I'm talking about justice. When the courts fail, when evidence gets buried, when money buys innocence, that's when places like Willowbrook become necessary. I felt sick. How many people? Over the years? Hundreds. Maybe thousands. Men who hurt children and walked free on technicalities. Women who poisoned their families for insurance money but had expensive lawyers. Monsters who slipped through every crack in the system. So you decided to become monsters yourselves. We decided to become a solution. Tobias finally spoke up from the front seat. That's why Cordelia left. She discovered that not everyone who disappeared was guilty of anything except asking the wrong questions. Garrison's jaw tightened. My wife was idealistic. She couldn't see the bigger picture. What was the bigger picture? I asked. That sometimes innocent people get caught in the crossfire. But their sacrifice protects thousands of others who would suffer if the guilty remained free. Who decides who's guilty? We do. The families, the council, people who've been protecting this country from its worst elements for over a century. And my grandmother disagreed with your methods. Your grandmother tried to expose us to the FBI. She nearly destroyed everything we'd built. Everything that kept real monsters from preying on innocent people. The landscape outside was changing. Rolling hills gave way to dense forest. Signs for Willowbrook appeared every few miles. What happened to her? I asked. How did she really die? Garrison's expression softened. Cancer. Real cancer. In a real hospital. With real doctors. Whatever you're thinking, I didn't hurt her. Despite everything she'd done, despite the damage she tried to cause, I loved her until the day she died. But you didn't try to reconcile. She made her choice. She chose righteousness over family, chose principles over protection. Maybe she chose love over fear. He looked at me sharply. What do you mean? Maybe she chose to love all people instead of just the people you decided deserved it. We drove in silence for several more miles. Finally, Tobias turned around. Quimby, there's something else you need to know. About the inheritance. What about it? The $17 million. It's not just money. It's funding. For people who want to expose what happens in Willowbrook. Your grandmother spent years documenting everything. Names, dates, methods. She left you enough money to take it all down. Garrison went very still beside me. She left me evidence? Not just evidence. Proof. Video recordings. Financial records. Testimonials from families of people who disappeared. Everything needed to bring down the entire operation. Where is it? Hidden in the house. In a safe that only opens to your DNA signature. That's when I understood why they really needed me alive. It wasn't about family reunions or taking my place in some twisted legacy. They needed access to whatever evidence could destroy them. And if I refused to open it, Garrison's hand moved to something inside his jacket. Then you'll join the long list of people who had tragic accidents in Willowbrook. Even though I'm your granddaughter, family loyalty goes both ways, Quimby. You're either with us or against us. There's no middle ground in this business. The signs for Willowbrook were getting closer. 5 miles, 3 miles, 1 mile. I had a choice to make. Honor my grandmother's dying wish to expose the truth, or protect myself by becoming part of the machine that had been killing people for decades. Through the trees, I could see the outline of a massive house on a hill. Willowbrook Estate. My inheritance, my grandmother's trap, and possibly my tomb. The car turned onto a private road marked with a sign. Willowbrook, private community. Authorized personnel only. Last chance, Garrison said quietly. Join the family business willingly, and you'll live a very comfortable life. Fight us, and you'll disappear like everyone else who couldn't see the bigger picture. I closed my eyes and thought about Mom, working 3 jobs to keep us afloat. About all the nights she'd wake up screaming from nightmares she never explained. About the fear that lived behind her eyes every time someone knocked on our door. About the woman in the photo who'd looked so hopeful before everything changed. I want to see the evidence first, I said finally. Not possible. Then you'll have to kill me, because I'm not opening anything until I understand exactly what my grandmother was trying to protect me from. Garrison studied my face for a long moment. Then he smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. You are definitely Cordelia's granddaughter. The car pulled up to the most beautiful house I'd ever seen. 3 stories of Victorian elegance, surrounded by gardens that looked like something from a fairy tale. This was where my mother had grown up, where my grandmother had lived before everything went wrong, where I was about to learn the truth that had torn my family apart. Welcome home, Quimby, Garrison said as we climbed the front steps. The door opened before we reached it. A woman in an elegant black dress smiled at us warmly. Ms. Thorne, she said, your grandmother has been waiting for you. My blood froze. My grandmother is dead. The woman's smile never wavered. Death is relative in Willowbrook. Please come in. Cordelia is very eager to see you. I stopped walking. That's impossible. Many things seem impossible until you understand the full scope of what we do here. The woman stepped aside, gesturing for us to enter. I'm Dr. Vivian Cross. I've been caring for your grandmother since her transition. Transition to what? Garrison placed a hand on my shoulder. Come inside, Quimby. Some explanations require visual aids. The interior of the house was even more stunning than the exterior. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow patterns across marble floors. Oil paintings of stern-faced ancestors lined the walls. Everything screamed old money and older secrets. Dr. Cross led us through a series of increasingly ornate rooms: library, parlor, dining room, each more elaborate than the last. Finally, we stopped at an elevator hidden behind what looked like a bookshelf. "The real estate is downstairs," she explained, pressing her palm to a scanner. The elevator descended for what felt like forever. When the doors finally opened, I stepped into what looked like a medical facility. Pristine white hallways, the smell of antiseptic, and the constant hum of machinery. "Welcome to the Willowbrook Life Extension Project," Dr. Cross said proudly. Life extension? Death, as humans have traditionally understood it, is simply a failure of medical technology. Here we've moved beyond such limitations. She led us past rooms filled with equipment I couldn't identify. In one, I glimpsed what looked like a person suspended in some kind of fluid. In another, machines that seemed to be breathing for someone I couldn't see clearly. "Your grandmother volunteered for our experimental protocols when her cancer became terminal," Dr. Cross continued. "Rather than accept the inevitable, she chose to become part of something greater." We stopped outside a room with a large observation window. Inside, connected to dozens of tubes and wires, was a woman who looked exactly like the person in my locket photo. Younger than she should be, somehow preserved in time. "Cordelia Ashworth," Dr. Cross announced. "Technically deceased for 3 months, but functionally alive in every way that matters." I pressed my hands against the glass. "That's not possible. Her brain activity is normal. Her memories are intact. She's simply paused between life and death while we perfect the technology to bring her back fully." "Bring her back how?" Garrison stepped beside me. "We've been working on this for decades. The ability to preserve consciousness, to extend life indefinitely. Your grandmother was our first successful long-term subject. She's a guinea pig. She's a pioneer. The first person to move beyond the limitations of human mortality." Dr. Cross checked a tablet. "Her vitals are stable. Brain scans show full cognitive function. She's aware of everything happening around her, but she can't respond yet. The communication protocols are still being developed." I stared at the woman who was supposedly my grandmother. She looked peaceful, but something about the whole setup made my skin crawl. "This is why my mother ran," I said. "This is what she was afraid of." "Zara was short-sighted," Garrison replied. "She saw abomination where she should have seen advancement. The ability to preserve the best minds, the most important people indefinitely. Imagine the possibilities. Who else is down here?" Dr. Cross consulted her tablet again. "Currently, 17 subjects in various stages of the process. Politicians, scientists, business leaders, people whose knowledge and experience are too valuable to lose to something as mundane as death. And the people who disappear? The ones you say deserve justice? Different protocols entirely. This facility has multiple purposes." She led us past more rooms. In one, I saw what looked like an interrogation chamber. In another, something that resembled an operating theater, but with equipment that belonged in a horror movie. "Justice takes many forms," Dr. Cross explained. "Some subjects provide information before their completion. Others become part of medical experiments that benefit humanity as a whole. You torture people. We extract truth. We advance science. We ensure that those who harm others contribute something useful to society before they're eliminated." My stomach churned. "How long has this been going on?" "The town was founded in 1887, Garrison said, "but the modern facilities have been operational since 1962. Your great-great-grandfather was one of the original architects of the program." "Program?" "Willowbrook serves multiple federal agencies. We handle problems that can't be solved through traditional means. We conduct research that can't be done in traditional facilities. We preserve assets that are too valuable to lose to natural causes. You're a government black site. We're a solution to problems that democracy can't solve. Sometimes justice requires methods that can't withstand public scrutiny." Dr. Cross stopped at another observation window. Inside was a man strapped to a table, electrodes attached to his skull. "This subject arrived yesterday, suspected of trafficking children but released on a technicality. Traditional law enforcement failed, so he becomes our responsibility." "What will you do to him?" "Extract information about his network, identify other predators, then ensure he never hurts another child. By killing him, by repurposing him, his organs will save lives. His brain tissue will advance our research. His death will prevent countless others." I watched the man struggle against his restraints. He looked terrified, desperate. Whether he was guilty of what they claimed didn't matter. What they were doing was wrong. "I want to see my grandmother," I said. "Alone." Dr. Cross glanced at Garrison, who nodded. 5 minutes. The room is monitored, so don't try anything foolish." They led me into Cordelia's room. Up close, she looked even more like the photo. The same bone structure, the same delicate features, but her skin had an artificial quality, like she was made of wax. I sat beside her bed. The machines hummed quietly, keeping her suspended between worlds. "Grandmother?" I whispered. "Can you hear me?" For a moment, nothing happened. Then her eyes moved, just slightly, but enough to focus on my face. "I'm Quinby, Zara's daughter, your granddaughter." Her eyes widened slightly. I thought I saw recognition there. "Mom said you were dead. She's been protecting me from all this." I gestured around the room. "But now they want me to be part of it. They want me to open some safe that only I can access." Cordelia's eyes moved again, this time toward a small panel on the wall I hadn't noticed before. "Is that it? The safe?" The slightest nod. Or maybe I imagined it. "What's inside? What were you trying to tell the world?" I stood and approached the panel. It was definitely some kind of scanner, designed for DNA or biometric identification. "They say you documented everything, that you left evidence to expose what happens here." When I looked back at Cordelia, her eyes were focused intently on mine. Then, very deliberately, she looked toward the door, then back at me. "A warning. They're watching," I whispered. Another tiny nod. I sat back down, thinking furiously. If I opened the safe, what would I find? Evidence that could destroy this place and save countless lives? Or something that would get me killed before I could use it? What do you want me to do? I asked quietly. Cordelia's eyes moved to the ceiling, then to me, then to the wall panel. A pattern. Up, me, panel. Up, me, panel. Above? There's something above the panel? The pattern again. I looked more carefully at the wall above the scanner. At first, I saw nothing. Then I noticed a tiny scratch in the paint. Numbers. 2751. A code? Quinby. Dr. Cross's voice came through an intercom. Time's up. I squeezed Cordelia's hand gently. Her fingers were cold, but somehow they pressed back just barely. I understand, I whispered. When I rejoined the others, Garrison was studying my face carefully. Did she respond to you? No, she just looked at me. It was heartbreaking. The preservation process affects some neural pathways, Dr. Cross explained, but her core personality is intact. When we perfect the revival protocols, she'll be exactly as she was before the cancer. And if I open the safe, what happens to her? That depends on what's inside, Garrison said, and what you choose to do with it. We took the elevator back upstairs. The transition from the sterile medical facility to the elegant Victorian rooms was jarring, like stepping between two different worlds. I need some time to think, I said. Of course. This is your home now. Explore, get comfortable. But understand, once you've seen what you've seen, you can never leave. Too many secrets, too much sensitive information. And if I try? The same thing that happens to everyone who tries to leave Willowbrook with unauthorized knowledge. A tragic accident on the winding mountain roads. Tobias, who'd been silent since we arrived, finally spoke up. Quinby, may I show you to your room? Your grandmother prepared it specially for you. Garrison nodded approval, and Tobias led me up a grand staircase to the second floor. The hallway was lined with family portraits going back generations. All the faces looked similar. Strong jaws, intelligent eyes, stubborn chins. Your room, Tobias said, opening a door. Inside was a bedroom that looked like it belonged in a magazine. 4-poster bed, antique furniture, windows overlooking the gardens. On the desk was a stack of documents. What are those? Your inheritance paperwork, financial statements, property deeds, trust fund details, everything your grandmother left you. I flipped through the pages. The numbers were staggering. Not just 17 million, more like 40 million in various accounts and investments. She was very wealthy. The Ashworth family has been accumulating resources for over a century. Your grandmother added significantly to the portfolio through various business ventures. Legal business ventures? Tobias closed the door and lowered his voice. Quinby, I need to tell you something. Away from the monitoring systems. He pulled out a small device and activated it. The air seemed to shimmer slightly around us. Signal jammer. We have maybe 5 minutes before they notice. What is it? Your grandmother didn't just document what happens here. She designed a way to stop it. Permanently. How? The facility downstairs. The life support systems, the computer networks, the security protocols. Everything runs through a central hub. She built a backdoor into the system, a way to shut it all down remotely. What would that do? Kill everyone being kept alive artificially, destroy all the research data, send evidence files to every major news outlet and federal agency simultaneously. Essentially, it would expose everything while ensuring no one could cover it up. I sat down hard on the bed. She built a kill switch. She built justice. But using it requires specific authorization codes, codes that were genetically encoded to your DNA signature. The safe. The safe contains the activation device. But Quinby, if you use it, hundreds of people will die. Not just the subjects downstairs, everyone in Willowbrook who's complicit in the operation. How many people is that? The entire town. Maybe 3,000 people, including families, children, people who just happened to be born here. The weight of it hit me. My grandmother hadn't just left me evidence, she'd left me the power to commit genocide. Why me? Why not just activate it herself? Because she wanted someone with moral clarity to make the choice. Someone who hadn't been corrupted by years of justifying the unjustifiable. But I'm 20 years old. I don't have moral clarity. I don't know what's right. That's exactly why she chose you. Because you still question things. Because you haven't learned to rationalize atrocity. Tobias checked his device. We're running out of time. What should I do? That's not my choice to make. But consider this. How many innocent people have disappeared here over the decades? How many more will disappear if nothing changes? The signal jammer deactivated. A few moments later, someone knocked on the door. Come in, I called. Dr. Haha. Cross entered with a dinner tray. I thought you might be hungry. The adjustment period can be difficult. She set the tray on a small table by the window. Roast chicken, vegetables, bread that smelled freshly baked. My last meal before I decided the fate of thousands of people. Dr. Cross, I said as she turned to leave, how did you get involved in all this? She paused. My daughter was murdered when she was 8 years old. The man who killed her was released on a technicality. Contaminated evidence. He went on to kill 3 more children before he was finally caught. I'm sorry. By then, it was too late for justice through conventional means. But here, I was able to extract every detail about his methods, his victims, his network of associates. Information that saved dozens of other children. His death meant something. Do you ever question what you're doing? Every day. But then I think about those children who are alive because of what we learned from their killer. The moral calculus isn't simple, Quinby, but it is necessary. After she left, I sat by the window eating mechanically while I watched the sunset over Willowbrook. In the distance, I could see the town proper. Neat houses, tree-lined streets, a church with a white steeple. It looked peaceful, normal, like the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. But I knew the truth now. This entire community was built on a foundation of blood and secrets. Around midnight, I heard voices in the hallway. Garrison and Dr. Cross discussing something in urgent whispers. Accelerated timeline. Other agencies asking questions. Need the activation codes by tomorrow. So they knew about the kill switch. They needed me to open the safe, not just to suppress the evidence, but to gain control of my grandmother's ultimate weapon. I waited until the house was silent, then crept downstairs. The elevator to the underground facility required a palm scan, but I'd watched Dr. Cross use it. Maybe the system wasn't as secure as they thought. I pressed my palm to the scanner. To my surprise, it worked. The elevator descended into the sterile depths of the facility. The corridors were dimly lit, most of the rooms dark. I made my way back to Cordelia's room. The machines continued their quiet humming, keeping her suspended between life and death. I need to know what you really want me to do, I whispered to her. Her eyes opened, focusing on me immediately. She'd been waiting. I looked at the wall panel she'd indicated earlier. The number scratched above it, 22751. Is that the code to open this? A tiny nod. And inside is the device that can destroy all of this? Another nod. But it will kill thousands of people. Innocent people. Cordelia's eyes moved to a computer terminal in the corner of the room. On the screen was a patient roster. Hundreds of names, dates, status updates. I scrolled through the list. Most entries were marked terminated or experimental failure, but some were still active. 17 people being kept alive like Cordelia, and dozens more marked intake pending, people who would be brought here to die. How many people will die if I do nothing? I asked. Cordelia's eyes moved to the screen, then back to me. I kept scrolling. The list went back decades. Thousands of names. Thousands of people who disappeared into this place and never left. And if I use the device? She looked toward the ceiling, toward the town above us. 3,000 people. But how many of them are innocent? How many are just living their lives, not knowing what happens down here? Cordelia's expression shifted. Her eyes narrowed slightly, then moved toward a filing cabinet in the corner. I opened the top drawer. Inside were employee records. Everyone who worked at the facility, going back to its founding. But more than that, family trees, recruitment records, psychological profiles. The truth was worse than I'd imagined. There were no innocent bystanders in Willowbrook. The entire town was a generational conspiracy. Children were raised from birth to accept the necessity of the facility. Families were selected for their ability to keep secrets. Anyone who showed signs of moral conflict was quietly relocated. They're all complicit, I breathed. Cordelia managed the slightest nod. I looked through more files. Birth certificates, education records, marriage licenses, all carefully controlled to maintain the genetic and psychological profiles necessary for the operation. Willowbrook wasn't just a town, it was a breeding program for perfect killers. Even the children? Cordelia's eyes moved to another section of files. I found what she was indicating, educational curricula for the local schools. Children as young as 6 were being taught that some people deserved to die. By age 12, they were touring the facility. By 16, they were participating in interrogations. My mother escaped this. A nod, followed by Cordelia looking toward a photograph on her bedside table. A picture of a young woman with a baby. Mom and me, when I was maybe 6 months old. You helped her get away. Another nod. And now you want me to finish what you started. Cordelia's eyes closed for a long moment. When they opened, they were filled with something that might have been tears. I understood. This wasn't about revenge or justice or even stopping the killing. This was about love. The love of a grandmother for a granddaughter she'd never been allowed to know. The love of a mother for a daughter who'd been forced to run. The love of a woman for all the innocent people who would suffer if this place continued to exist. I'll do it, I whispered. I approached the wall panel and entered the code. 2751. The panel slid aside, revealing a small safe. Inside was a device about the size of a smartphone, along with a handwritten note. My dearest Quinby, I read aloud. If you're reading this, then you've seen the truth about our family and the terrible thing we've been part of. I know the choice I'm asking you to make is impossible, but sometimes impossible choices are the only ones worth making. The device requires both your DNA signature and your conscious choice to activate. It cannot be used against your will. Whatever you decide, know that I love you, and I'm proud of the woman your mother raised you to be. Grandmother. I picked up the device. It was warm to the touch, and a small screen lit up when I held it. DNA sample required appeared on the display. I pricked my finger on a small needle built into the device. The screen changed to DNA confirmed Quinby Thorne authorized. Below that, activation requires conscious consent. Do you wish to proceed? 2 options appeared. Yes and no. I looked at Cordelia one last time. Her eyes were closed, but I could see the peace on her face. She'd passed the burden to me, and now she could rest. I thought about my mother working 3 jobs and living in fear. About all the children who would grow up to become killers if this place continued. About the innocent people who would disappear into these rooms and never be seen again. About the choice between certain death for 3,000 guilty people and continued death for countless innocent ones. I pressed yes. The device hummed to life. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in red. System shutdown initiated, the device announced. Evidence transmission beginning. Life support termination in 60 seconds. I heard footsteps running in the corridors, shouts of panic and confusion. Cordelia's eyes opened one last time. She looked at me and smiled. Actually smiled. Then her eyes closed as the machines around her went silent. The facility shook as systems began shutting down. Water pipes burst. Electrical conduits sparked. The carefully maintained environment that had kept this place hidden for decades was destroying itself. I ran for the elevator, but it was already non-functional. Emergency stairs. There had to be emergency stairs. I found them just as the lights went out completely. In the darkness, I climbed toward the surface while the building collapsed behind me. I emerged into the Victorian house as the sun was rising. Through the windows, I could see smoke rising from various points around Willowbrook. The device had been thorough. Every government building, every facility connected to the operation, every computer system that contained evidence was simultaneously destroying itself and transmitting its contents to the outside world. Garrison found me in the parlor, sitting calmly in an antique chair. "What have you done?" he demanded. "What my grandmother couldn't," I replied. "What my mother was too afraid to do. What someone should have done decades ago." He raised a gun, pointing it at my chest. "This doesn't end it. There are other facilities, other operations. You've just made yourself a target for the rest of your very short life. Maybe. But now the world knows what you are. Now there will be investigations, arrests, trials. Now the families of all those missing people will have answers. You've killed thousands of innocent people. No. I've stopped thousands of innocent people from being killed by people who were never innocent to begin with." Sirens were approaching from multiple directions. Federal agents, probably. The evidence transmission had worked. Garrison kept the gun trained on me as we waited. "You could have had everything. Wealth, power, protection. Instead, you chose righteousness. Just like your grandmother." "I chose love," I said. "Something you never understood." When the FBI broke down the front door, they found Garrison sitting across from me, the gun in his lap, staring out the window at the town he'd spent his life protecting. "It's over," he said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. "It is." 6 months later, I testified before a Senate committee about what I'd seen in Willowbrook. The trials are still ongoing. Hundreds of people have been arrested. Dozens of government officials have resigned. The $17 million turned out to be real, as did the rest of my inheritance. I've used most of it to establish a foundation for families of missing persons. Mom finally told me the whole truth about our family, about the nightmares that had haunted her for 20 years. We live in a small house now, far from Willowbrook. Sometimes I wake up wondering if I made the right choice. 3,000 people died because of what I did. But then I think about all the people who are alive because I did it. In my dreams, I see Cordelia as she was in that final moment, peaceful, proud, free. And I know that sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that let us sleep at night. The phone calls still come occasionally. Unknown numbers, threatening voices, promises of revenge, but they don't scare me anymore. I learned something important in Willowbrook. Some secrets are too terrible to keep, some legacies too poisonous to inherit, and some choices too important to leave to someone else. My grandmother gave me the power to end a nightmare that had lasted for generations, and I used it.